Well, hello, good morning, everybody. Talia and I'd like to welcome you to this morning's meeting. We are fortunate to have with us Shiva Person Whitley. I got that right as far as the pronunciation. Yes. Who is Executive Director of the Sonoma County Economic Development Board. She's been there since 2019. If you've been here for a couple of minutes, you've just heard us talking about how she and a couple of other people on the panel here walked into the county at a somewhat difficult time. And anything's going to be better than what you've been going through up until now, Shiva. So, there's only good things ahead. And she has a wealth of background in the economic development area. She's been working here, obviously, for a few years, but she also is served as economic development manager for the city of Stockton. There's a city that had its own challenges. I think it's one of the only ones I know that really had some really severe things and has come through it well. And I'm sure that she was a part of that. She was Senior International Trade Manager for Louisiana Economic Development. She was also involved in economic development for Northern California Department of Commerce and others. So I'd like to go ahead and welcome Shiva to the party, if you will, and pick up your comments. Shiva?
Thank you so much. Thanks for the great introduction. And thank you to Talia, the Chamber, City, and everyone else who've been supportive, been in this partnership with us. We've talked about it briefly before we kicked it off, all the disasters and really resiliency and recovery and how do we think about those different things. And I know that it really just takes a great deal of collaboration and partnership to do that. Like the county can't do it on our own, the cities can't do it on their own. We all really pitch in and support each other. So I just want to thank you not only for the opportunity, but thank you for the partnership. I'm going to share my screen. I do just have a really brief presentation, and I will also make sure that I share that with Talia and Jessica as well, so that they're able to send that out to anyone who's interested in that. Really, I just want to talk really briefly about what the county has been doing, some of the priorities that the county has right now, as well as our department. I will start off by talking about ARPA. So the American Rescue Plan Act. The county is doing a lot around ARPA. We do have an allocation of $96 million that will be coming to the county. Approximately 20 million of that has really been designated for continuing COVID response. So about 20 million of that is going to go over to the Department of Health. The rest of it is going to be split between departments in the county as well as community. The community will have an opportunity to submit proposals. There will be a notice of funding availability that will be made available. Anyone who meets the criteria, who wants to apply for that funding, will be able to submit a proposal. The one thing I will say is really, the county is really trying to focus on equity and where people have been impacted the most. And so to that, in that vein, there will be a work group that will be formed and comprised of community members. They will have an opportunity to help kind of shape the framework for ARPA. What should those priorities be? What sort of data should the county be utilizing as they make funding decisions? What sort of things should they be measuring? Not only outputs, but outcomes, and how do we think about long-term economic recovery from COVID-19 and the impacts that our community has faced? And so on the 14th, the Board of Supervisors will have a meeting where they talk about some of the priorities for departments. And then November 2nd is where they will talk about their priorities for community funding. Again, we don't know exactly how much is going to be made available for community projects, but I think that all of the Board of Supervisors are really intent on projects and programs that are really going to be focused on long-term economic recovery from COVID-19. They're really focused on those smaller communities, rural communities. How do we integrate equity into the process? So again, more to come on that. There's an entire website dedicated to that. I will drop that in the chat for you as well. But anytime that we have, I think, an opportunity to participate as a community, to understand how we work on things together. I do think it's really important that it's a collaborative process. It can't just be the county deciding here's what the community needs, but how do we involve the community in this process? So more to come on that. We do have 2 websites on that. Everything is in the chat. I would encourage anyone who's really interested in following ARPA or interested in participating in the work group, that application is open until next week. So I would encourage people to apply because that really is going to give us the framework from which those decisions are going to be made and how we think about priorities. The county has really tried to step up on environmental impacts and sustainability. So we did have a board item really talking about a polystyrene ban and zero waste. I know that the city of Healdsburg has been a leader in this space and has already had that ban, but the county is really trying to do its part as well. Sometimes we can have a little bit of a slower start, but I know that it is a priority, particularly for a couple of the board members who really have made this a part of their platform. We at EDB, we're partnering with Zero Waste Sonoma. We're trying to really do a lot of engagement with our business community around what are the impacts, how do we think about conservation and sustainability, what sort of alternative products might be made available. So if you have a polystyrene ban or you have any sort of ban on one-use plastics or any of those things, we know that that can have a significant impact on our restaurant industry. So what sort of, products, services, resources are available to support people through that process. And we, with Alina's help, actually, we have a really robust engagement strategy around that. I've been really working hard to partner with the cities as well as other organizations in the county to do a lot of engagement to make sure that people are aware of not only the ban itself and the county's commitment, really to get to this resolution of zero waste by 2030, but also how we can, support them through that process. Something else that the county has been working on is vaccination and testing verification. So I think we've all heard about this in the last several weeks. Initially, the county, as the largest employer, we're really working on this, more around self-attestation. So they were allowing county staff to basically just fill out a form to say they have been vaccinated. And through Dr. Mace and others, they really decided, nope, that's not good enough. We're continuing to see spread. So we want verification. So that is, a copy of your verification card from your local medical provider or other documentation to verify that you actually have been vaccinated, or if a person is, has decided for personal reasons or medical reasons or other that they don't want to get vaccinated, then they actually have to submit to weekly testing. And that is going to be a requirement. It is actually enforceable. The county even has a whole HR policy around non-compliance and disciplinary action for non-compliance. And, although it is not an order, I want to be really clear, there's no health order for our local employers. The county's position has been that they are strongly recommending that our local employers and our local businesses consider something very similar to this. And there is a whole toolkit on the EDB website, socolaunch.org, really about, what sort of resources are available, how do we think about these things collectively, and how do we support our local businesses if they want to do pop-up vaccination clinics on site or any of those different things, to make sure that they understand what resources are available to support them through that. I know that it can be quite intimidating for people to think about, well, I'm just trying to run my business, right? Now you're telling me about this whole vaccination thing. I don't know anything about that. And so for us, it's really about how do we, think about the barriers that people are facing and how do we provide, relevant resources and be a support system. We are a county department and everything we do is free. And a lot of times people don't even know that there are resources that are available. So we always just try to do whatever we can at our department to make sure people are aware of the resources and that we're here to support them. Not only around vaccination and all those different things, but any and everything related to emergencies and COVID-19. So we've got fire resources, we've got PSPS resources, any and everything related to COVID. We have an entire site dedicated specifically to resources in response to COVID-19. And in addition to that, not only do we look at what's available internally in our department, but we also do a lot of partnering with other organizations. I do want to make sure that everyone's aware that the California Small Grant for COVID relief is actually still available. Those are grants up to $25,000. The last round of that is going to be open from September 9th through the 30th. And so I would encourage that, if you know of any local small businesses that have not applied, I will acknowledge that in the very beginning, that site was overrun, quite frankly, with applications. The site did crash. They had a lot of technical issues. My understanding through our staff working with them is that that has all been worked out. So that if there are any businesses that are still on the fence, they don't know if they should or shouldn't, and we would encourage them to apply. We want to make sure that they also know that we do have staff available. So, you know, again, this can be very intimidating. It can be really difficult to navigate a lot of these things. They're not always seen as really accessible, whether that be in terms of the technology that's available to help us do this, or even just the types of documentation that people have to submit to be able to successfully apply. Our staff, we do all of those different things. We do it for free. We do a lot of technical assistance. So if anyone's trying to, you know, access a grant, access any sort of capital, they need market research. If you know of a business that is looking to expand, we do all sorts of things to help people through that. If they're at risk of leaving, we do retention in our department as well. So we have these 4 economic development professionals that are our business managers that are really tailored and experts at helping people with any and everything related to business development. And of course, if it is something that is outside of our bailiwick, we have a great network of resources available, and we can, you know, connect people and be that convener and pull different people together. So again, I would just encourage everybody, if you ever know of any small business that needs any sort of help at all, we really want to be a resource on any and everything related to business development and economic development and workforce solutions and business diversity and all those different things. We have a really great staff here. And again, everything we do is free. Another big initiative right now is broadband. I know broadband has been a hot topic, especially because of COVID-19. I think everyone acknowledged that we already had a digital divide before, and all those different things have been exacerbated greatly by COVID-19. And we were hearing from people who were displaced and couldn't apply for a job, or that were really looking to do online continuing education, and we're struggling with that. We've heard from a lot of parents whose children were struggling to access school online. And so, you know, we're trying to just take advantage of this moment right now that we have, where broadband is in the hot seat and highlighted in a positive way. We have a record number, a record amount of funding that has been made available at the state and federal levels to support broadband. So this is a key initiative of our department, as well as a key initiative of the county. For the very first time, broadband is actually in the, not only the county strategic plan, so resilient infrastructure, but also in the legislative platform. So the county has a platform of legislative priorities for the state and federal that our internal staff work with our lobbyists to really move these initiatives forward. And broadband infrastructure projects have been included in the legislative platform. And so it really is this collaborative effort of not only EDB, but other county departments, working with our legislative staff at the CAO, working with the lobbyists, and collectively, how do we pre-position ourselves to take advantage of these funding opportunities? How do we identify these shovel-ready projects so that the county is really ready to take advantage and pull down funding? So that's an important initiative. Right now, we're doing a speed test because we know it's really important to really understand, well, what is available and how is broadband performing overall, and how do we get more data on that? So that's available on our website. That's just a really important infrastructure priority, again, for our department. And we have Calvin Sandine, who's phenomenal doing that work. Another different thing that we're doing right now is a regional effort, a partnership with Mendocino County. So this is not new. We actually have an economic development district, which is a regional effort with Sonoma County and Mendocino County. And as a part of that, we have a strategic plan that's this comprehensive plan that has to be updated every 5 years. And the real reason you do it is that if you have this plan, then when federal funds become available through the Economic Development Administration, you have that plan as your roadmap to apply for those funds. And so we're going to be doing a couple of convenings around, well, what should the priorities be? What are the needs in the community? How might we work better collaboratively, you know, between these two counties? Where is the synergy, right? Knowing that you have lots of different personalities, you have 2 separate boards of supervisors, all these different people who have their perspective, but how do we think about these things collectively? So we're going to be doing, what we call community think tank sessions, where we want to hear from the community about, well, what should we be thinking about? So whether that be workforce, environment, infrastructure, livability, all these different things that we know, broadly speaking, are priorities. How do we think about them in a more intentional way? And what should we be prioritizing? We want to make sure that it isn't just staff operating in a vacuum, but that we really are doing this really collaborative process, that we get to hear from the public and the community about what they need and what they think that we could be doing better and what we should be prioritizing. And lastly, we do have a couple of current upcoming resources and roundtable discussions that we're going to be having. A lot of what we do, again, is about making sure people understand what's available out here for them. So we're going to be partnering with the Economic Development Finance Corporation out of Ukiah, as well as Redwood Credit Union. And we're going to be having an access to capital or financing your business workshop. That is going to be on September 22nd. It is free. Everything that we do is always available in English and Spanish. I want to make sure I am clear about that, because we want to make sure that our bilingual as well as our monolingual businesses have an opportunity to access the same information. So if anyone's interested in that, or of any small businesses that could really take advantage of some sort of assistance from the EDFC or from Redwood Credit Union, again, about how to access capital, how to finance your business. And again, that's startup as well as existing business. We're going to have that workshop available. And we know that workforce is a priority. I think a couple of people have heard me talk about this before. We're going to be doing these employer roundtables around workforce solutions, workforce development. What are some of the barriers that people are facing around workforce, and how do we work together to identify solutions? Because we know that it's a complex issue, right? I know a lot of people talk about UI benefits. That's absolutely part of it, but there are also other barriers, whether that be childcare, whether that be benefits or other things to take into consideration. And so we are going to have 2 different workshops available for people who want to participate in this roundtable discussion. Spanish interpretation will be made available. Those dates are September 15th and September 22nd. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I just want to say again, thank you to everyone for having me here. We do have a tremendous amount of resources available. If anyone has any questions about how to get involved, any sort of assistance, anything of that nature, please reach out to our team. Check out our website, sonomaedb.org, and we're always here to support and be a resource and partner in any way we can.
Great. Thank you very much, Shiva. Wonderful presentation, by the way. Got it all in the exact amount of time. It was a remarkable amount of material. Okay, I noticed that we have some city council people here. I just want to recognize Ariel, David, and Ozzy. Thank you for joining us. And before we get to David with updates, are there any questions from anyone else out there that you have for Shiva?
I have a question, maybe Shiva, you might be able to answer. It goes back to the zero waste slide that you put up. And just update on composting. Are you aware where we stand as a county on composting matters? Obviously, it's our company's piloted a program about 10, 15 years ago with then Waste Management. And then we had obviously the state come in and issue their composting mandate. And now the first of this next year, we have yet another regulation that's coming down from the state with concern to composting and food donations. But to my understanding right now, everything that's being hauled off in composting isn't being processed here in Sonoma County. And it's being trucked further and further. So there's some disparities there. I think the county needs to lead on and get figured out. But again, that's where I'm at, what I know. Do you know anything further?
Do not know anything further other than to acknowledge that is my understanding as well, that there are just some barriers and challenges locally with the facilities that we have here in terms of what they can take, how they can process it. I'm not an expert, so I want to give my disclaimer around that, but that is my understanding as well. I do know that Zero Waste Sonoma, as well as TPW and others, are really trying to lean in and figure out creative solutions around this. but I do not have an additional update other than that. I can definitely follow up with them to find out where that stands specifically around composting.
Yeah, it's just we do all this work, right, at the lowest level, right, and at the highest level where it's going isn't figured out. So I think that should have some priority given to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Anybody else out there? I don't know that I can see everybody. Jessica, is there anybody else have their hand up or anything you can see?
No, nobody has their hand up, I don't believe.
All right.
I just wanted to ask quickly on some of the workforce solutions and workforce development ideas that we had spoken about last time, even at Government Affairs. We sent out the information that you're providing. From there, when we have the roundtables, are we hoping to come up with some significant solutions? Is it just discussions to see what the problems are? Just any ideas around that? Because I continue to hear that as probably the number one issue for everybody, really just getting back into some sort of normalcy for business.
So from our perspective, it's really both, Talia. It really is, how do we have an honest dialogue where people feel like they can just say what it is they need to say, right? What their challenges are, their perspective, get that all out, as well as what have not only other local employers, particularly in the restaurant, hospitality, tourism, leisure industries, what have they been able to do successfully? And how can the county support these efforts, right? So we know that there are some federal funds available that we're able to pull through JobLink and others. Are those really truly accessible? Is that what we really need? Or do we need something different? EDB's perspective is if we get some recommendations of not only, we can talk about what's available now, but if there are any recommendations on, what people think are really going to help in this situation, we want to try to be supportive of that. Another thing that we're doing around workforce is our department was made aware of community development block grant funding through the CDC. And so they actually reached out to our department to say, oh, we have this money available to support business. And so all the proposals that we're submitting to the CDC for this funding are all around workforce solutions. So this again will be another opportunity if people have ideas on creative solutions, then we can put together a proposal potentially how we can pull down these funds to support those efforts. So an example of what we've been thinking about are stipends. So if childcare is an issue, if transportation is an issue, could we use this funding to provide a stipend to a local employer that they could then use as an incentive to remove some of those barriers to people coming back to work? Again, that's just a really broad idea, but we are looking at it from every angle and every side, right? So what are people facing? What's working, what isn't? And if, what's available through the county and through other, state and federal resources, and what isn't available, and how might we think creatively about bringing new solutions on board to really help address workforce and labor force challenges that our local employers are facing.
Sheila, just in general, how is the Sonoma County economy rebounding, or is it rebounding, I guess, at this point in time? Do we have any indications?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say that the last report we received from the EDD, which is the state employment development department, we are at, I believe, I'm looking for it, I had it earlier. I think it's just over 5% unemployment rate was the latest data that we had. Overall, we're doing better, right? We are, coming into recovery. Our department has partnered with Dr. Rob Eiler out of Sonoma State University to do a COVID economic impact update. He did a report for us August of 2020. He just updated that information. So we will actually have a full report available to the public to really shows like what's the economic forecast and projections for recovery. It really is looking like 22 to 23 before we get to full recovery. And so full recovery would be where we are in relation to where we started from. So if we were to rewind the clock all the way back to January of 2020, or even November, December of 2019, how long is it going to take for us to get back to that level? That's what people think about in terms of like full economic recovery. It's going to be a long haul. And part of the challenge, even with the best projections, quite frankly, is that we're dealing with a pandemic and we're dealing with a virus, and viruses mutate. And we are seeing that right now with the Delta variant. And so then what happens is you have your projections and they're based on where we think we're going to be with the spread of COVID and where we think we're going to be in terms of restrictions and mandates and shelter-in-place orders and all those different things. And then the virus mutates. And then, you know, whether it be local jurisdictions, states, county, federal, or whatever, they might change their ordinances, their health orders and mandates and all these different things in order to respond to a public health crisis. And so that's what I think any economist will tell you is the unknown variable with all of this, is that we're dealing with a virus, and depending on what happens with the spread and depending on, you know, how we continue to, you know, get more people vaccinated. Every economist that I've ever heard talk about this from early on has said that mass vaccination was the key to recovery overall from COVID-19. And so that's not to get into, you know, whether or not I think, you know, what people should do in terms of their personal choice. But if we think about just the spread of the virus itself and how that it impacts our activities, what we can do, how we can travel, all those different things, that there's a direct correlation there. So I hope that answers your question. We definitely are starting to see recovery, but it's a long haul. And I think what's unique about Sonoma County is our connection to tourism and travel. And we really do have not only those direct jobs and those direct employers that are in the hospitality, leisure, and tourism industry, but you also have a lot of these what we call feeders that support those industries. And so whether that be restaurants or whether that be like linen services that might support our local hotels, all of these different things are interconnected. And so we do have a very diverse economy overall, but we are very still dependent upon this very traditional economic activity that we have here. And, you know, I think safety and mitigation is going to be really important, clear communication that what people can do safely, that really builds up confidence. And when you have consumer confidence, then people are going to go out and they're going to, you know, participate, and they're going to stay at hotels, and they're going to visit the wineries, and they're going to go out ziplining and all these different things that we're really known for as a community. So we're not out of the woods yet, but it is encouraging. And the more people that we can, you know, get doing things safely, then the better off we're all going to be.
Yeah, I'm sure part of the challenge too is that our trajectory just before the pandemic was so good. I mean, we had kind of like all-time lows on unemployment and things like that. So I could get back. What about sales tax dollars? Are those looking comparable? I mean, it seems. Do you have any information on that at all?
I don't have it in front of me, but I do have Dr. Eiler's report. I don't want to misquote any of that, so I can actually pull that data and probably before the end of this call and put it in the chat.
That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? If not, on behalf of everybody here at the Chamber, I want to thank you very much, Shiva. Been great, very informative. Really glad to meet you and have you on board there at Economic Development. I'm sure there's going to be great things coming forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to stay, but I know you've got other things to do as well. At this point, we're going to go ahead and move on to Mr. Hagley with an update from the City Council. David?
Actually, I'm going to hand off to our Vice Mayor to kick things off, and then I'll wrap up with just an update on the chamber walk that I did. So, Ozzy,
thank you.
Talk about our agenda.
And then thank you, Sheba, for that excellent presentation. It's so great to have you at EDB. Good morning, everyone. So a couple of updates from the city of Healdsburg. Well, before we get to the couple of updates from the city of Healdsburg, I just want to say that last month I was able to participate in a BIPOC panel of businesses for the Economic Development Board that Sheba facilitated. What was great about that conversation was we discussed what challenges BIPOC businesses had been facing during COVID and still the challenges that many still face. One of the key components out of that panel was that we had Marlene Orozco from the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative. And so some of you know I'm an alumni of that program. And so what's key there is that, you know, there are still many challenges. You know, one of the biggest ones is financial literacy for a lot of our businesses. who are monolingual. And so I want to give a shout out to the folks on the COVID task force from last year that initiated the SBS loan program. That program was so critical to offer a sense of security for many of our businesses in the downtown corridor. And so special thanks to the COVID task force, and then also our previous interim city manager, Dave Kiff, who helmed that with Will Seppi and others, and David Hagley. So kind of an update on that. We are getting very close to sharing our RFP for the equity task force discussion that's coming along with it. So we're hoping sometime by the middle of September to be able to have that RFP out. Also coming before council on Tuesday is we are looking at Arpa funds. So we're looking at 2.8 million that's coming from the federal government. And so I know council is looking at, what items we're prioritizing, what items are important, and looking at it from a very fiscal lens. And then also just kind of an update on what's coming before us on sometime in October 18th. We're planning a study session for cannabis for the city. So just wanted to give a quick little update and handing it off to David Hagley here.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple things I want to touch on. I had a chance to do the chamber walking tour. So that's something that the chamber's been doing with various council members. And it's a good chance to kind of, get out of whatever the topic of the day is, and you stand and just kind of soak things in and observe, and you walk around, you talk to the local businesses. And, some of the things that I just want to relate to the business community that we're aware of is, things like the rats downtown. Those are things that we had talked about. I had a conversation with Jeff about it. You can see, something we talked about. Also, just things that, when you do slow down and you do these walking tours, you notice things like, it was pointed out to me, the garbage cans look very dirty. And it's something you don't normally think of, but as some, for the residents and the visitors coming to downtown, it's those little touches that I think, if we're able to focus on and address, it just adds a little something else to the livability and what, part of the reason we all love Healdsburg, both for the residents here and our local businesses that, help support our downtown. We talked about that on the agenda. It is, I just want to kind of follow up on what the vice mayor was saying, that we do have quite a few important things related to the budget. One of the things, if you wanted to go in there, you can see the list of authorized positions. It shows all the positions that are authorized to the city. We're also going to be discussing the future of the wastewater or the reclaimed water delivery program. And that's a big one because it's been very successful. But as Councilmember Kelly has brought up numerous times during the meeting, it's pretty pricey to do it. And we need to look at that long term because we're operating in this kind of crisis mentality under this emergency order to kind of address things right away. So that's a topic that I think is really important for everybody to kind of chime in and share their feedback on what does that program look like in the long term. I know I'm open to hearing ideas and feedback. And I'll just wrap up with our IT department switched. If anybody's had to type in our email addresses with that at ci.healdsburg.ca.us, it's now just at healdsburg.gov. So the old ones work. You don't have to reprogram anything. I mean, if you want to, you can, but going forward, it's a lot easier to reach any of us. It's our first initial and last name at healdsburg.gov. So I'll leave it at that and answer any questions if anybody has any. Otherwise, we'll turn it over to the city manager.
On the reclaimed water, I think Jeff on the last meeting was talking about kind of the program you guys were looking at to bring purple pipe at least to some of the city facilities in parks like the golf course and what have you. Is that still, because that would take up, from what I understood, would use pretty much all of the reclaimed water that would be available, which would be great. It's freed up for the rest of the city.
So that's a different one. The item that we're going to be discussing is really related to the delivery program. Like right now, the trucks, we have over 900 people that have signed up. There's a cost to do that. What does that look like long term? I think most of us are assuming there is going to be some kind of a rain this fall and winter. How does that adjust? You know, are there shifts that need to be made? You know, it's a discussion item, and I'm looking forward to hearing the ideas.
Yeah, my thought was that if you do use purple pipe out to the city facilities, and my understanding is you use like 70 million gallons and you've got 31 million coming out, you won't have any water for that program unless you take it away from that purple pipe program. And I know there's costs on both sides. Are you anticipating keeping both going on?
I think that's the reason for the discussion, because those type of questions are legitimate. You know, because we have a requirement of, you know, or we have restrictions on when we can release some of that water during the winter time. And, you know, so we do need to get rid of that water. And this has been a great program that has benefited the city as well in terms of being able to get rid of some of that reclaimed water. But from a long-term standpoint and cost to do it, it's all things that we need to consider. What does that look like long-term when we're not in a drought crisis? Down the road, what does that look like? So,
and also, if I could add to Councilmember Hagley, you know, one of the biggest things that the city is looking at is cost. So a lot of what the discussions around purple pipe are really around where can the city find funds at the state and federal level, just because the cost for purple pipe is and perhaps Jeff Kay, city manager here, can kind of talk a little bit more about the cost for purple pipe and kind of the challenges that we're looking at right there.
Yeah, I thought there was some federal money for that. And I thought your guys' idea of getting it maybe just to the city facility so that there was more other water available for the community made sense, because it didn't cost as much as it would to run purple pipe out to every house in town. But I know that's part of your general discussion. We can get into that later. I was involved, I actually represented the city, well, it wasn't a city of Windsor at that point, it was the Windsor area and their water district when we started running water out to the different vineyards there. So I'm, you know, got a little bit of background on it. But in any event, okay, any other questions for David or Ozzy? Or Ariel?
I'll just offer a comment on the water matter. I think it's a great program that the city's doing for the citizens. As you drive around town, you see it being done. Certainly a short-term solution, but David Hagley's point is definitely not a long-term solution. But in the interim, it's a great effort by the Community Services Department to provide water to the rest of the community. Ozzy, question for you. You mentioned the $2.8 million in federal money. Is there a staff report that is coming in on that with suggested allocations?
Yeah, there is. So the agenda got posted yesterday evening. So there was a proposal that council looked at a few months ago in terms of where we were thinking initially first. And so now coming forth on the meeting on Tuesday, we'll be making formal decisions on how that money will be allocated. So if folks feel so inclined, please join us for our Tuesday meeting as we engage in the ARPA discussion.
Is that the that's ready for shovel-ready projects that's coming from the feds?
It's a couple of different things. I don't have the staff report right in front of me on ARPA, but they include you know, various different items that the city manager has proposed that we, you know, ARPA is, you know, the American Rescue Plan Act. So it's recovery monies that we're looking at, but I don't have the report in front of me right now. No.
Okay.
And then one other quick question for Ozzy, if you don't mind. The cannabis matter, can you elaborate what you were referring to there?
City manager, would you mind chiming in here for the study session around cannabis? I don't have the agenda in front of me, so.
No problem, I'd be happy to. This will be very much an introductory conversation. What we're planning is a study session. This is something that came out of the city council goal setting earlier this year, and I think last year too, and got waylaid by COVID and other things. So very much an exploratory discussion at this stage. There's an interest in having a conversation about what options are available in terms of allowing different types of cannabis businesses or not, how the revenue works, how the regulations might work. So really starting at square one is our intent, to give an overview of some of the options and get some initial direction from the council in terms of what avenues would they like us to explore. So this is the beginning of a fairly long journey, I imagine, but not a specific proposal for a specific type of policy at this stage.
in city, I mean, obviously this is a council goal, so directing city staff to begin diverting resources into looking into this.
Correct. Well, looking into it, yes.
Thank you.
Can I just add real quick, the agenda, as Vice Mayor mentioned, is posted already, and I'm assuming everybody knows how to get there, but if not, you go to healdsburg.gov, go under government, and you'll see agendas or minutes. Click on that, and you'll see agenda packet. That's the entire thing. If you click on the date portion on the left, then it'll have the links, and you can jump right to whatever specific agenda item that you that you have an interest in, so you don't have to read everything else that we have to read.
Yeah, and I think, did Jessica, did you just post that in the chat room?
Yes, I did. I'm posting the agenda packet as well.
Great, thank you. All right, anybody else have questions for David, Rossi, or yeah? If not, let's cut over to Jeff. Jeff, it was nice to meet you in person. I've been only seeing you through Zoom for a year or whatever at this point. At the event that we had at the Villa, that was great. Thanks and you did a wonderful job too. So Jeff, what's happening with City of Healdsburg these days?
Sure. Well, thank you. And I agreed. It was nice to see a lot of people in person. So thanks to everybody at the chamber who worked on that event last week. It was very well done. So thank you all. I know it's not easy. I'll add on a couple of things. One, Mark, you asked a question about sales tax, and I sure won't try to answer that for the county level. But I can say locally, after taking a bit of a nasty hit right at the onset of the pandemic and the shutdown, it actually started to level off and didn't diverge all that much from our projections in terms of revenue. However, the composition of that sales tax and where it came from changed rather dramatically. Internet sales, I won't go into the boring explanation of the county pool and how they're allocated differently, but they went way up. And some of that is just the way the laws are changing right now about internet sales. Thank goodness we're actually receiving some sales tax from that where we weren't always. But also it means that there was no shock here, a big shift to online purchases during the pandemic. So when I wear my very myopic budget balancing hat, then it's good to see the revenue flat. But it is in fact concerning from a local economy perspective when a lot of our sales start running through warehouses in the middle of nowhere and driven here on a truck, as opposed to at all of your businesses. So good news, bad news on that. But specific to your question, the revenue itself has actually been sort of close to what was projected, so at least that's a good thing because the hotel revenue sure wasn't. So that's a positive. Also on the recycled water project, it's actually my expectation that if we were to be able to run that purple pipe, there would be adequate recycled water to be able to do something meaningful to residents. It's actually our intent that somewhere within that project, there would be a station in town that would make recycled water available. I think long-term, that's probably a better option than us driving big, heavy trucks around, even if they're not, it's good that they're not coming from 3 miles south of town, but it's still a problem. So that would have to be figured out, but the hope is there would be a way for residents to get their hands on some amount of recycled water when valuable.
Yeah, on the grand scale, every gallon of recycled water you use someplace is a gallon of potable water. It could be used someplace else, even if it is used, to water a lawn someplace. So I think that's great.
Yeah, and we are scraping like crazy to try and get our hands on money. Our utilities director and I were on a call yesterday with the Bureau of Reclamation, trying to figure out their grant programs and what extra money they're getting. So it's a maze, and a lot of the details, both at the state and federal level, are yet to be announced for all of this infrastructure money, but we are watching it very closely, and I'm pretty optimistic right now that we'll be able to get our hands on something with a lot of zeros on it to help with that work. So we'll keep working on that. Just a couple other things I'll acknowledge. I want to mention that last week we had sort of a highly disruptive event in town that impacted a lot of you as businesses and representatives of the business community. So you're all aware that we had a boil water notice for a big chunk of the city that was challenging. I'll also just say out loud that I think our team worked really hard to kick into gear really fast to be able to get information out, but I don't think we hit every note exactly right. So I'll share it with all of you that we're doing what we can. I hope we never go through this again, but there will be some lessons in terms of how you outreach to your business community and or your entire community in a pinch, in a crisis. And I think we'll do our best to catalog those lessons and fine tune our response going forward. But I know it was really challenging. It was particularly challenging for some businesses, including some of you, when the county health department started knocking on doors and had a different set of standards than we'd been relying on. So just one of those things we're going to have to do a debrief on and learn from and try to get better information going forward. But I know it was challenging. So we feel badly for the impact that it had on businesses, and we're going to do our best to work through it. And a lot of debriefs and a lot of conversations, and your feedback will all be helpful in that. So we'll try to put together the lessons, but also come together with the right response going forward for this specific incident in terms of what we need to do to respond to it. So that happened, but it fortunately feels a little bit like a long time ago already to me. So that's a good thing. And I think the last thing I'll mention is, as we talk about things that are coming up, we also anticipate within a couple of months the return of the urban water management plan to the city council. There was a work session on that. Was that just last week? It was just last week, right before the pipes broke. If you just flip through that thing, it's an incredibly technical and perhaps even boring document, but then you put it in the context of everything that we're living through right now, and it's really consequential. So for those of you thinking about how we grow or don't grow and how we manage our water supply, it's incredibly relevant and important. We don't have a date yet, but we are working on putting together another community meeting to give the community a chance to weigh in on that before it comes back to council as we continue to make refinements to that document. We had a really successful community meeting on that a couple of months ago. So I think even in the Zoom world, we've got a pretty good template for that. But that will be announced fairly soon, as well a date based on that work to get it back to the council to consider for adoption. But it's again, it's a very technical document, but if you're interested in this topic, and I know many people are, I'd recommend the draft is on our website on the utility and water section. So I'd recommend having a look at that and reaching out to our team if you have any questions or thoughts.
And I'll go back, just touch on again about the feedback. It is important. You know, when the notifications went out, one of the comments I got a text, hey, is this thing legit? Because it didn't have our logo on it. You know, it's those kind of things that you learn. I mean, like we talked about before we went on here about crisis after crisis, and we're constantly learning and improving, you know, to where we can have some of these draft documents ready for, I don't know, I guess we need to brainstorm about what next could happen next and have some kind of a draft ready to go that kind of gets some of these details. But the feedback, you know, it is helpful, and we do read your emails, so send them over.
Actually, I thought you guys did a great job given what you had to deal with. I like the idea of the map that was included with it that kind of showed the area involved, because that quelled a lot of fears that people had. They're outside the area, of course, but it also identified those who were in it. And it was, I thought actually it was a very good response. I realized you may not have had the logo, but I thought the purpose was really good. And yeah, I want to compliment you guys on being able to jump on it and do it as good a job as you did. All right, anybody, Jeff, you have anything else? No. Anybody have any questions for Jeff? It's your last chance.
Yeah, this is Mark Decker.
Jeff, not you, Mark. Everybody else, not you. No, I'm just kidding.
Thanks, Mark. I was just wondering how the TOT is in according to what was budgeted.
We will, it's up. I'm happy to say there's actually, as part of the budget adjustments that will be brought to the city council for consideration Tuesday night, I'd say the big headline money is, what do we do with this additional money coming in from ARPA? But there's also some more routine adjustments, and one of those will be an increase in the community services fund revenue projection, I think 600,000, which then allows us to restore a lot of the funding that was chopped out of that department's budget. So it's trending in a really good direction. You all see this if you walk around town, just like I do on Thursday through Sunday. Trending in a great direction. We're trying to be a little bit conservative. I wasn't here for all of it, but I've heard loud and clear that any number of things can happen this time of year that could suddenly cause us to lose a weekend or more of visitors. So we're trying to be careful, but it's doing pretty well at the moment. So that's a good thing.
Great. That's good news in general. All right.
And if I may, this is Brooke with HTAD, just piggyback on the end of what Jeff just said. We have opened up as of yesterday the phase 2 of the district development grants. So we will be accepting applications as of yesterday. If you know anybody in need that meets the qualifications, please encourage them to apply. The link is on the city's website, and I will post it in the chat as well.
All right.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you,
not the
Brooke.
city's, the chamber's website.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brooke. Anybody else have any comments? Talia? Any closing remarks?
I do not. I, as usual, just really appreciate everyone's attendance at these. We are looking for additional ideas. We get the speakers from everyone telling us what's important, what's hot issues or topics for their business. So if you can please send those to Jessica or I, we really appreciate it. But no, I just didn't get a chance to say good morning, Healdsburg, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one of these.
Yep. And these speakers, like Sheba, did a great job. They take a lot of pressure off of, say, David and Jeff, who otherwise have to fill in the other half hour. Okay, well, I want to thank everybody. Jessica, thank you again for all you do putting this together with Talia. It's the unsung heroes that really support us through these things. And thanks again, everybody. Look forward to seeing you next month. Sheba, thanks very much for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And I did send that additional information to Jessica. It was too much to put in the chat, but she can definitely distribute that on my behalf. Thank you so much.
Great.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. See you guys later.
Thank you.
Thank you.